racer. This week I've had a little rummage around in my shed and I've come across this book which might be of interest to some of the viewers of this channel, and it's called the Driving Games Manual, which is published by Haynes. Now Haynes, you might be thinking, hang on a minute, they make workshop manuals for cars. But no, now they've gone into the virtual world looking at driving games and sim racing. And the book, it does cover all the games from the 1970s right through to the 2000s. So for each decade it's got some detailed reviews and retrospectives of some of the more popular games and sims from those decades. It also covers track technique for racing tracks and also for rally driving, which will be quite handy for newbies to sim racing, so there'll be some interesting things to learn in there. It also covers car setups. It's got theory on that, which is more relevant to sim racing nowadays than it ever has been. You know, the more realism that's happening with these titles. It also covers player setup as well, so it goes from basic driving wheels right the way through up to high-end sim racing rigs. Also there is a driving games list at the end of the book which covers all the games from the various decades. Some of them you may be familiar with, some of them may be new to you and you might like to try them, so that's quite interesting to see. So anyway, we'll have a more detailed flick through the book. Right, so it starts off with a foreword by Bruno Senna. It goes on to say how he was wowed by Jeff Crammond's Grand Prix back in the day, and moves on to how excited he's going to be for the future of this genre of video game. Right, so there's quite a broad introduction in the book. It's going to cover what the book covers, technological evolution, the arcade simulation distinction, the relevance of classics, and the modern driving game. So here it's talking about the technological evolution, how processor power has improved on systems, and how they're able to focus more on the artificial intelligence, damage modelling, and obviously also the level of graphics that have improved. It's also going on to talk about audio as well, how surround sound tracks have been implemented into games, especially as DVD came into fruition. And that's enabled a lot of 5.1 channel soundtracks. And then also goes on to talk about the AI, artificial intelligence, how that's improved gradually over the years. Then it goes on to the modern driving game, so it's saying like the games of the 1970s and 80s could be the work of a one or two man team, a programmer and a musician, but then it says fast forward to the mid 90s and even the arcade greats at the time like Daytona USA would average out 20 individuals on a 12-month development cycle, and then again these days you're talking about 100 plus team or even 150 plus team. It's on to the 1970s, which isn't really a decade I'm familiar with, seeing as I was born in the 80s. But again, this is where it all started, so very basic games. I mean, something that does look familiar, I suppose, is Sprint 2, which in the 80s would be Super Sprint. Right, now we roll into the 1980s, a decade I am familiar with. This was a great decade for this genre of video game. We saw massive advances in the arcades. Starting off with the general bitmap but Mode 7 graphics to start with, but by the end of the decade we were looking at polygonal based graphics, in the arcades at least, and on PC. Right, it goes on to say here that pole position, it's saying that Sega's Turbo was arguably the first full colour sprite scaling driving game, and its pole position, which emerged a year later, it says that is generally the title associated with that honour. But it's anyway, that aside, Namco's Racer, it's not short on innovation, and it can claim to be the world's first driving game to be based on a real circuit, which was Japan's Fuji Speedway. Right, now we move on to Revs, which was on the BBC Micro and Commodore 64. So this is from Jeff Crammond. So before he did Formula 1 Grand Prix, this is what he'd done, Revs. This is where it all started. Also it covers Boogie Boy, also known as Speed Buggy, which is obviously one of my favourite games. It was covered on most of the home formats. Now, if there's any racing game you're going to associate with the 80s, it's going to be Sega's Outrun, which was a technological showcase back in the day. It was using Sega's Superscaler technology, which was Sega's marketing term for sprite scaling, which was largely responsible for the game's exceptional sense of speed. Also the revolutionary hydraulic powered deluxe arcade cabinet, which was revolutionary at the time, given another dimension to the driving dynamics. Now we get into the end of the 80s, we're now getting into polygon territory with hard driving, which was available in the arcade and on home consoles. Also Stunt Car Racer and the infamous Indianapolis 500 on PC. Now we move into the 1990s, which has got to be arguably the most exciting decade for driving games. I mean, from 1992's Virtua Racing. Then we'd see Ridge Racer, Daytona USA in the arcades, and we've got Need for Speed on 3DO. That was revolutionary for its time to see those sort of graphics in the home. Sega Rally Championship, Formula 1, TOCA Touring Car Championship, and Gran Turismo. That really changed it for the home consoles, getting a fairly realistic simulation. And Colin McRae Rally. Now let's have a look at Formula 1 Grand Prix, which is programmed by Jeff Crammond of Revs and Stunt Car Racer fame. And this offered a level of simulation, way ahead of titles like Indianapolis 500 that had been released a few years previous. It was based on the 91 Formula 1 season. So one of my favourites, Virtua Racing. I mean, this changed a lot of things. I mean, in terms of arcade races, they actually did a lot of research on the game. They were studying the 92 Ferrari and McLaren Honda engines. They also spoke to drivers and engineers, and even hired a Honda NSX out for a period of time. It's just put the finishing touches to the handling model in the game. And it actually included 120 advanced parameters, such as air density, slipstream and aerodynamics. And then of course following that we had Ridge Racer and Sega Rally. I mean, Ridge Racer graphically worlds ahead of Virtua Racing. In the arcade it even has a fully working clutch and 6-speed gearbox setup, which is, well, I've not really seen anything like that in an arcade game since. It's all sequential gears now. There's F1 there on PS1, and GTI Club in arcade, which was later released on PS3. I mean, that was a great game because you had alternative routes that you could take. Then we have TOCA Touring Cars by Codemasters. This added a real-time damage model, which ensured some of the most exciting virtual racing to be had on console at the end of the 90s. Of course, in 1998, Gran Turismo was released on PlayStation, and this sold 11 million copies of the first game. Also, Nissan used the game to make widespread awareness of its Skyline GTR. And we have Grand Prix Legends. It's based on the 1967 F1 season, and the physics engine had taken over a year to perfect. It incorporated gyroscopic torque forces as well as the application of true physics. Because it's set in a pre-downforce assisted F1 era, the cars had very little weight and they ran on narrow hard rubber tyres, which this also meant that this had a reputation for being one of the more difficult simulations. Now we move into the 2000s, a few notable mentions: Metropolis Street Racer, Outrun 2, Richard Burns Rally, GTR 2, FIA GT racing game, Motorstorm, Colin McRae Dirt, Forza Motorsport 2, Gran Turismo 5 Prologue, and iRacing. The opening years of the 21st century truly are the decade of the driving game. The arrival and the commercial success of Gran Turismo at the end of the 90s it unleashed a more widespread interest in digital driving than it had previously experienced, both within the industry and amongst consumers. And we have Metropolis Street Racer on the Dreamcast. This was most technologically advanced game at the time. Then it went on to become Project Gotham Racing. And there's Outrun 2. I mean, this is basically an updated version of the original game, effectively. It's not really messing with the system. It's got a 15-stage branching setup. Then we have Richard Burns Rally. I mean, this was nothing new on PC, rally sims. We had previously had Mobile 1 Rally Championship in '99. However, on console, all we had was Colin McRae Rally. And the McRae games may have got progressively more intricate handling wise, but they're yet to reach a level that would be termed simulation grade, like RBR. I mean, the authenticity of the driving model is such that anything other than the most precise and delicate approach results in an excursion off the track. Then we have MotorStorm on the PlayStation 3. I mean, this secured the attention of the gaming crowd through the quality of its visuals. But again, there was a lot more elements to this where there was no rules anyway, so it's just a frantic, no holds barred vehicular argument with the opponents. But adding to the experience is the layout of the tracks, which have a general direction which is quite evident, dictated by the topography of the terrain. But again, as each lap progresses, the profile alters of the terrain, so you have to take that into consideration for your next lap. This was also used in 2007's Sega Rally. And we had Forza Motorsport 2 on Xbox 360. I mean, this convincingly overtook Gran Turismo for the lead in the console sim subgenre. It also had believable AI with real tyre damage and online play, which is the first game which easily outpowered Gran Turismo 4 in all areas by graphics upon its release in 2005. Then we finished the 2000s off with iRacing, which iRacing is not a game, as its developer is keen to point out. It's a training tool for racing drivers, both professional and amateur, wishing to get some track time without the expense and hassle of doing it for real. And iRacing is still being used to this day. There's always developments going on for it. Also with the tracks that are available for training, they are laser scanned circuits, so the dimensions are translated precisely into the simulation. Now the book moves into track technique, so it goes into the basic racing line, the real racing line, types of corner and learning the track. Right, here it's looking at rally driving, handbrake turns, lift off oversteer, Scandinavian flick, drifting, overtaking, slipstreaming, accidents and avoidance. Now we're looking at car setup, which is more prevalent than ever in sim racing games. There's alignment, tyres, suspension, gear ratios, aerodynamics, etc. It's got a lot of details into the tyres of the car, different compounds and wear. We're going to suspension settings, spring rate, anti-roll bars, gear ratios, braking. That's it. The book then goes on to player setup, so it's going to look into force feedback steering wheels and different sort of setups where home racing simulators. So we've got Logitech G27 there, sorry G25, that's how old this book is. We've got the play seats, book kicker, surround sound systems. And then finally the book goes into the driving games list, and this is a comprehensive list that has been carefully selected, and it's all games that have been released in the West. It represents around 700 games across 44 formats, so up to the date of the book. I hope you guys enjoyed that little look of the book. It's not actually available on the Haynes website anymore, as it was last published in 2008. However, you can still get a copy of it on eBay or Amazon from as little as £4.50 if you'd like to get a hold of a copy. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please press the like button. If you'd like to see more videos to come, please press the subscribe button. Okay, I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.